If you have been with me through this journey, then you already know my story. It wasn't an easy process, but now I am ready to face my fears. Stay with me as I tell the final tale of my journey through progress. The day I saw my mother again was the first time in months that I felt both ready and terrified. Auntie Lara had told me gently, "Ngozi, the family protection team wants to invite your mother for mediation. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. You will decide what feels safe." I said yes, though my stomach felt like it was folding in on itself. Because no matter what had happened, she was still my mother. We met in a small counseling room at the social welfare office. The walls were painted cream and the curtains fluttered with the fan. I could smell antiseptic and paper. When she walked in, she looked smaller than I remembered. She had cut her hair, and there were deep lines around her eyes. She didn't look at me. She sat down quickly, hands clenched around her handbag. The officer started speaking in a calm tone. "Madam, thank you for coming. We are here to talk, not to fight. Your daughter has been through a difficult time. She's safe now, and she wants to heal." My mother kept her eyes on the table. "She wants to make me look like a bad person," she muttered. My throat tightened, but I stayed quiet. Then the officer said something I will never forget. "This is not about blame. It's about safety. And safety begins with listening." The room fell silent. You could hear the hum of the fan. Finally, my mother looked at me. Her eyes were wet but hard. "Ngozi, why?" she asked. "Why did you tell strangers about our home?" I wanted to answer carefully. I took a deep breath. "Because I was scared, Mommy. I didn't want to die in silence. And you never believed me." Her lips trembled. She looked away. Then she whispered something so low the room almost missed it. "I didn't know." I swallowed. "You didn't want to know." The words came out soft, not angry. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I just needed her to see. And then she cried. Not the angry cry I grew up with. The real kind, where your shoulders shake and you forget who is watching. The officer said quietly, "It's okay to grieve what went wrong, but don't let shame stop you from fixing it." My mother nodded slowly. Through her tears, she said, "I thought getting married would save me. I didn't know I was losing you." Something inside me cracked open. All the anger, all the loneliness, it poured out in tears I didn't know I'd been saving. We cried together, two broken hearts, trying to remember how to beat in the same rhythm again. Her arms were still the same, warm but trembling. She whispered into my ear, "I'm sorry, Ngozi. I believe you now." I didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't, not yet. But I said, "Thank you." Sometimes forgiveness begins with just thank you. In the following weeks, she visited the shelter twice. The first time she brought oranges, the second time she brought herself, quiet, unsure, but trying. She started attending a support group for parents. She told Auntie Lara she wanted to learn how to love differently. Every time she came, she looked more human and less like the storm I used to know. One day, she asked if she could sit with us during group reflection. When Ruth, our therapist, asked everyone to finish the sentence, "I wish I had known," my mother said, "I wish I had known that strength isn't pretending everything is fine. It's protecting what matters before it breaks." I cried again, but this time it wasn't pain, It was release. When the official process ended, the officer said I could choose where to stay. I chose to remain at the shelter until the school term ended. I needed more time to breathe before going home. My mother understood. That alone was healing. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "Tears are not weakness. They are proof that the pain left through the right door." Healing. That word sounded so beautiful when people said it, like something soft and quick. But I learned the truth. Healing isn't a straight line. It's messy. It's slow. And sometimes it hurts more before it gets better. After the meeting with my mother, I stayed in the shelter for a few more months. Life there began to feel like breathing fresh air after living in smoke for years. I still had bad days. Nights when I woke up crying without knowing why. Mornings when I couldn't eat. But the difference was, now I didn't have to hide it. When I felt sad, I could knock on Auntie Lara's door. She would open it every time, no matter how late. Sometimes we didn't even talk. She would just sit beside me, her hand warm on mine. No shouting, no blame, just quiet understanding. One evening she said, "Ngozi, healing takes time because your heart is learning to trust peace after living with chaos." I wrote that down in my notebook immediately. It became one of my favorite sentences. Some days, I joined group sessions and shared my story. Other days, I just listened. There was comfort in knowing I wasn't the only one learning how to live again. We were girls rebuilding ourselves one small piece at a time, like mosaics made from broken glass. And somehow, the cracks made us more beautiful. At school, I started to smile again. Not the kind of smile you force when someone says cheer up. This one came naturally, like the sun peeking out after rain. When people asked about the shelter, I said it was a boarding place. I wasn't ready to explain everything, and that was okay. I didn't owe anyone my story before I was ready to tell it. Mrs. Bayo still checked on me often. She once said, "Ngozi, you remind me that one voice can change a whole story." That day, I realized how powerful it is to be believed. My mother kept coming around, not too much, not too little. She was learning to give me space. She always brought fruits, biscuits, or sometimes nothing but her time. One Sunday, she asked if I wanted to go to church with her. I hesitated, but said yes. When the choir sang, I felt a lump in my throat. It was the same church where she once dragged me years ago, where I used to pray that she would love me. Now, standing beside her, I whispered my own prayer again. Not for her to love me, but for us both to be healed. After service, she squeezed my hand and said, "I didn't know I could lose my child while she was standing beside me. Thank you for giving me another chance." I smiled through tears. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it opens the door to a better future. Back at the shelter, Auntie Lara started giving me books to read. One was titled "Becoming Whole." The first line said, "The pain you survived is not your identity, it's your testimony." I underlined it 3 times because that was me. I wasn't the evil child anymore. I was the girl who survived and was learning how to live. Sometimes I still had nightmares, but instead of waking up in panic, I learned to whisper to myself, "That was before. This is now." And slowly, now started to feel safe. The day I was told I could go home for good, I packed my things carefully. Kemi helped me fold my clothes and said, "Promise me you'll keep writing. Don't let the world take your voice again." I hugged her tightly. "I won't." Before I left, I went to the mango tree in the shelter's yard. It reminded me of the one behind our old house, only bigger, stronger. I sat under it and wrote one last page in my notebook. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering with peace. It means my story doesn't end in pain. It grows into purpose. I closed the notebook, smiled at the sky, and whispered, "I'm ready." Going home felt like walking into a place I had known all my life, but didn't quite recognize anymore. Everything looked the same. The gate that creaked when you pushed it, the mango tree stretching over the fence. But the air was softer somehow, lighter. Mama was standing by the doorway when I arrived. Her hands trembled as she waved. "Ngozi," she said, almost like a prayer. I didn't run to her. I walked slowly, my heart unsure whether to expect warmth or cold. But when she pulled me into her arms, she didn't smell of anger anymore. She smelled of home, old soap, stew, and something I hadn't known from her before: peace. She held me so tightly, I could feel her heartbeat against mine. "Welcome home, my child," she whispered. Those 3 words carried everything I had waited years to hear. The house had changed. The old curtains were gone, replaced with clean ones. The walls had been repainted cream. Even her tone had changed. She spoke softly now, not shouting from across the room. She no longer used the word evil when she was angry. That first night back, she asked if I wanted to sleep in her room. I said no, that I'd rather stay in mine. And she nodded. No argument, just understanding. We ate dinner together. Halfway through the meal, she looked at me and said, "I've joined a group of mothers who meet every Saturday. They teach us how to love better." I smiled. "That's good, Mama." She nodded. "They told me healing begins with admitting the damage. I did damage, Ngozi. I let my pain speak louder than your cries. I'm so sorry." I reached across the table and held her hand. Her palms were rough from years of market work, but that night they felt gentle. We didn't say anything for a while. The silence between us was no longer painful. It was healing. The next morning, she came into my room with a tray: bread, tea, and boiled egg. She set it down and said shyly, "I didn't know what you like now, but I remember this used to make you smile." I laughed softly. "It still does." She smiled back. "Then eat before it gets cold." It was a small thing, but my heart felt full. For years, I had dreamed of a moment like that, and now it was real. Days turned into weeks. Mama started calling me my daughter again. She didn't talk much about the past unless I brought it up. And even then, she listened more than she spoke. Sometimes, she would stand beside me at the window and say, "I can't undo what I did, but I can make sure I never repeat it." One Sunday afternoon, Mama came to me with a piece of paper. It was a flyer for a women's outreach event. She said, "They're inviting me to share my story, but I told them I don't want to talk about pain. I want to talk about change." I smiled. "That's even better." She looked thoughtful. "Do you think people will listen to someone like me?" I reached for her hand. "Yes, Mama, because people believe stories that come from the heart." She squeezed my fingers. I learned that from you.
We started praying together again at night. Not long prayers, just short, sincere words. She would pray for strength, and I would pray for gratitude. One night, she said, "Ngozi, I used to ask God to give me a husband. Now I ask Him to give me wisdom." I smiled into the darkness. "That's a better prayer." She chuckled softly. "You sound like a mother now." Our relationship wasn't perfect. There were still days she got moody or tired. Sometimes I still felt distant. But we were learning, slowly, honestly, with open hearts. We even went to visit the mango tree behind the house. She stood under it and said, "This is where you used to pray for me, isn't it?" I nodded. "Every time you shouted, I came here and asked God to make you happy." She blinked back tears. He answered, "Ngozi, just not the way I expected." We laughed and cried at the same time. That night I lay in bed and realized something. Healing doesn't mean life goes back to how it was. It means you build something new. From truth, from forgiveness, from grace. I no longer feared the night sounds in our house. The quiet now felt safe. The walls didn't echo pain anymore. They echoed peace. And for the first time since I could remember, I slept without my door locked. I used to think my story ended the day I came home. But I was wrong. That was just the beginning. Because healing is not the end of a journey. It's the start of a new one. A journey where you learn to use your scars as light. I turned 18 last month. Mama baked a small cake, her first ever. The icing was uneven, the writing crooked. The most beautiful cake I'd ever seen. She wrote on top of it, "My blessing." I cried. Not the painful kind of crying, but the healing kind. The kind that makes you breathe deeper afterward. We laughed, we danced, and when she hugged me, she whispered, "Ngozi, I used to call you a curse. Now I know your name was prophecy." And maybe she was right. Maybe my name, Blessing, was always God's secret promise that my story would not end in pain. After leaving the shelter, I went back to school to finish my exams. I started volunteering with Safe Words, a small group we created at the shelter. We visit schools, talk to students about speaking up, about boundaries, about kindness. The first time I stood in front of a classroom to share my story, my hands shook. But as I looked at the faces staring back at me, some curious, some afraid, some quietly broken, I realized they needed to hear this. So I spoke. I told them about a girl who was blamed for existing, who was called evil, who almost lost her voice, but didn't. I told them how that girl found people who believed her, how she found light after darkness. And when I finished, the room was silent. Then a girl at the back raised her hand and said, "Thank you. I think I'm ready to tell my truth too." Mama now comes with me to some of these events. She doesn't speak much, but her presence says everything. People see the love between us, the kind that took years to rebuild, and they understand that even broken families can find their way back. I still write in my notebook. Only now, the pages are full of dreams. Dreams of studying counseling, dreams of helping girls like me, dreams of turning Safe Words into a foundation one day. At night, I sit under the mango tree. Yes, the same one. It's taller now, and so am I. I write new prayers there, not begging for peace anymore, but thanking God for giving it to me. One evening, as the sun set behind the rooftops, Mama joined me under the tree. She sat quietly for a while, then said, "Do you ever wish things had been different?" I thought about it. Sometimes, I said, But if there were, I might not be who I am today. She smiled sadly. You're stronger than I ever was. I shook my head. No, Mama, I'm strong because you decided to change. We stayed there until the sky turned orange and the first stars began to show. Now, whenever I meet someone going through darkness, I tell them what I learned. That your story isn't over because it's painful. That being broken doesn't mean being useless. That there is always someone, somewhere, willing to listen. And that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to speak anyway. If you're listening to me now, maybe you've been hurt too. Maybe you've been blamed for what wasn't your fault. Maybe silence feels safer than truth. Please listen to me. You deserve peace. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to live free from fear. Talk to someone you trust, a teacher, a counselor, a friend. There are people who will listen even if the first ones don't. And when you finally speak, your voice will become someone else's hope. My name is Ngozi. I was once called evil. Now I am called a blessing. Because from my pain, I found purpose. From my tears, I found truth. And from my voice, I found victory. To every child who was told they were a mistake, you are not. You're a miracle in progress. Keep going. Your story can still become light.
Thank you for listening to my story. I hope this story inspires you to never be afraid to speak up, no matter the situation. Find your voice and never give up.